Now, this is Mount Sinai, and this is the same mountain where Moses spoke to God in the form of a burning bush. Well, some of the stories in the Bible might actually sound very unbelievable. And trust me, many people till this day actually think that the Bible is all just storybooks and fairy tales, and that the stories that we hear in the Bible are not real. But what if I told you that there are archaeological proof that still exist till this very day that actually gives us a solid proof that every single thing that's written in the Bible are events that actually happened in real life? And this right here is Mount Sinai, the place where Moses met God and he spoke to God. And this is the same mountain where Moses got the 10 commandments from God himself. Now, the top of this mountain is completely burned and formed into this complete volcanic ash-filled ice-like structure all around the top of this mountain. Now, this was known to be one of the most highly archaeologically researched site of all time, because obviously the Bible claims that Moses went to the Sinai mountain and spoke to God himself, which the archaeological evidence has now shown us. And this mountain in particular has a top that's completely burnt down and is just filled with ashes for many thousands of years. And nobody ever dares to go up here. And obviously the religious leaders have restricted people from entering these zones because these are some of the holy places and also archaeological sites. So they want to preserve this place as much as possible. Now, even after thousands of years, it just seems like the place where Moses saw God as a burning bush, where the top of the mountain was completely being burned. Now, what's miraculous in this whole event is that there is literally no traces of anything that could be consumed by fire. There's no wood, there's no tree or nothing or whatsoever, but it seems like the top of the mountain, which is completely filled with rock, is fully burnt into ashes. Now, many archaeologists believe that this is the same site in which Moses spoke to God himself in the form of burning bush. And since God appeared to Moses as a burning bush, which is basically fire itself, so this basically makes a lot of people believe that the Mount Sinai, this location right here, is the exact mountain on which Moses spoke to God. Now, there's also more proof to this whole thing, because right beneath this mountain is also a campsite which seems to have been placed thousands of years ago. And apparently this location is very closely preserved and monitored by the archaeological team. And apparently it seems like this location is the same place where Aaron and the rest of the Israelites that were following Moses from Egypt and escaping into Israel. In the Bible, it says that they were camping beneath the Mount Sinai, where Moses climbed up this mountain in order to go speak to God, in order to see what he has to say and get some answers from him. So during this time, the Israelites, they were camping in this location where Aaron and the rest of the Israeli tribes, they decided to build a golden calf and worship that golden calf in the name of God, which obviously Moses was not very happy about, and it angered him. It also angered God because God gave him the 10 commandments, and in anger Moses ends up breaking the 10 commandments tablet. So according to the archaeological study, right beneath this mountain, exactly as the Bible states, there is actually a campsite where it seems like thousands of people were actually camping in this place many thousands of years ago. And there are also proofs of these people camping in there, and you can also see some of these engravings on the stones in the same location where they were camping. Now, if you go down and take a look at these engravings, you'll actually see that Aaron and his tribe of Israelites, they basically carved this bull structure on a rock, which basically indicates that they were planning on melting the gold and building the golden calf that they were supposed to be worshiping. So apparently this whole thing was documented, and they basically just carved the whole story down there in the camp because they were staying in this camp for a very long time. And now the whole plot just summons up here because the archaeologists have found the same campsite right underneath the Mount Sinai. And there are still many remains of these people that lived there in the camp, and there are many remains of the campsite itself. There are different tools that were left behind by these people. And also there are hundreds of graves. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what happened in the biblical story, now apparently when Moses came down and he learned that many people were not following his commandments and God's commandments, and they were just ready to go back to their false idol worshiping, and they just wanted to worship the golden calf. Now, this is where things turned ugly, because Moses commanded half of the Israeli tribes to slaughter the rest of the Israeli tribes who were not following the commandments of God. And there were hundreds of people. I think it was about 500 people, or I'm not exactly sure about the numbers, but there were at least 500 of the Israeli tribes that were slaughtered on that that day for not following the commandments of God and for worshiping the false god. So these people were actually buried in the same location. Now, right next to the campsite, which the archaeologists have discovered, they've also discovered a site which seems to be like a graveyard, where apparently there are 500 people's graves that have been dug in. And there are also tombstones and many, memorable stuff that's been laid out there. So this basically gives us a solid proof and foundation that everything that we have read in the Bible is absolutely true. And all of these events that happened are archaeologically proved, and these things are real. And till this very day, till 2025, we still have all of these proofs that's lying around in Israel. So if you want to know if the Bible is true, I would definitely suggest you guys to go take a Holy Land tour. Go to Israel, go ahead and explore that place, go to all the holy places and see all of these things are real for your own self, because these things are definitely real. You can go to each one of these places and you can actually look at these things and you'll know that everything that's written in the Bible is actually true. And that's the reason why many nations have been going to war and many kingdoms have risen and many kingdoms have fallen. The reason is because each one of them fought for the truth. Now, what's even more interesting is that Moses was commanded by God is that when Israelites were traveling through the Sinai desert, they had absolutely no food or water. So Moses decided to ask God to provide the water, and God commanded Moses to lift up his staff and hit the specific massive rock that was standing right in between the desert. And God commanded Moses that if he hits the rock, water will start coming out of this rock. And that was supposed to be a miracle that God performed in order to feed his people and quench their thirst. And according to the latest archaeological evidence and proofs and research that they've done, they have also found this massive rock which Moses struck using his staff. Now, this rock is apparently 5 stories tall, which is almost 50 feet tall, and that's really huge, to be honest. And this was supposedly the rock which Moses was commanded in order to strike it. And as he strikes it, the rock supposedly splits in half, and from inside the rock was this massive amount of water that was just springing out. There were also fish that came out of this water. So all the people of Israelite, they were fed and they were also quenched with thirst. And this was one of the greatest miracles that God performed for his people. Now, this same rock has also been found by archaeologists, and apparently these things are also historically proven. And now the foundations of the scriptures have been made so firm that we literally have all of these evidence and proofs that Bible is indeed true. It's not just this, because we also have another incredible story, an entire chapter in the Bible named as Sodom and Gomorrah. And in this chapter, you'll see that God was so angry on the city called Sodom and Gomorrah, where the people in the city were sinning so bad that God decided that he's going to rain sulfur balls of fire down on earth, and he decided to completely melt down the entire city and all of its people. Now, obviously, when you read such stories in the Bible, it sounds very unbelievable, because if I didn't know the truth and if I didn't see the proof, then I would genuinely find it very hard to believe as well. Trust me. But fortunately, archaeological evidence have now once again proved that this particular site, known as Sodom and Gomorrah, where God rained up sulfur, like millions of sulfur balls, is still present. And I've already made a video on this stuff previously. I'm going to play the previous clip for you guys, because I think I've done pretty good explanation on one of my previous video about the same particular topic. So I'm going to replay that one for those of you guys who might have missed it. So take a look at this clip real quick. This is one of the biggest discoveries that humankind has ever made so far, because they just found the sulfur balls and an entire city that is completely burned down and was submerged under the water. And now that the entire river is dry, and archaeologists just discovered that there is a whole entire city that looks exactly as mentioned in the Old Testament, also known as the Torah. And for those of you guys who don't know, there was a city named Sodom and Gomorrah, which had a massive civilization of humans that were committing sins which is very similar to what we do these days in our generation. One of the craziest sins that God was really not happy with back in those times was the thing that is also growing in our current generation, which is known as the LGBTQ, and homosexuality being normalized was the biggest sin back in those times that God was not able to tolerate. And obviously, for those of you guys who haven't read the Torah in the Old Testament, back in those times, God was not really very merciful, to be honest. So when God witnessed that this city named Sodom and Gomorrah was committing excessive sins, he decided to rain down millions of fiery sulfur balls. And what does these sulfur balls do? It basically just burns down the entire city, with all the men and women and children and basically all the livestock, everything completely destroyed because of all the sins becoming excessively generalized back in those times. And back then, God really liked this one dude named Lot, who is someone that also lived in the same city. But then God ends up warning Lot and his family in order to leave before he rains down the fiery sulfur balls into the city and destroys it completely. Now, this is what happened in the Old Testament of the Bible, or even in the Torah. And what's interesting is that there is this archaeologist named Expedition Bible on YouTube. He ended up going to this location where the Sodom and Gomorrah city is located, and here he found out that the entire city was completely burned down. And if you walk down into the city, you'll actually find that it is completely filled.
And this is the site that the archaeologists associated with Gomorrah.
Look at this stuff. Every single thing in the entire place is like completely burned down. The whole mountain and the valleys and everything, it's completely burned down. And currently it looks like a mountain, but then back in those times, it was an actual city with millions of people living in there. So the whole thing was completely destroyed. So the entire city was completely destroyed, and it was burned down to ashes by the sulfur balls that started raining down from heaven.
So here you can see that ashy layer that's just underneath the surface. This is full of burned pottery. It's full of the fragments of human bones. The question is what evidence is there of this burning sulfur that rained down? Well,
look at that stuff.
It seems that the culprit are these sulfur balls that are also found in this area.
That's crazy, dude. So obviously, you know that if you go down to this location and if you start digging, you'll see a lot of human bones from back in those times. And there were millions of people that used to live in the city, and everybody were burned down because of all the sins that they've been committing. Now here what happens is that the archaeologists, they try to research the location and see if they can find any sulfur balls, but then there were not many sulfur balls left in that location, because the property of a sulfur is in such a way that once it starts burning, it doesn't stop burning until it's completely consumed 100%. So no matter what it is, it's not going to stop burning, and it's going to burn each and everything in its way, including the entire city and its people with it. Now obviously this means that all the sulfur balls that kind of just rained down in the city is almost 90% already consumed by the fire. So there were only very few pieces that was left out, which the museum started collecting, and they kind of just kept this in there because this was some sort of a biblical museum that you can go down to Jerusalem and you can actually take a look at this stuff, where you can actually go down to Israel to this archaeological museum, and you'll actually find that they have all of these historical monuments saved down in this museum. And here you can see this is basically what the sulfur looks like, which rained down from heaven. And that's because obviously, as we have already spoken, sulfur, once it starts burning, you can't really preserve it. It's basically going to get completely consumed unless it lands into some sort of a water body, which means that there was also a massive river near the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the archaeologists decided that the river that was flowing all the way from Sodom and Gomorrah, that was connecting to the Euphrates River, which is now almost dried up. And this is also something that you can see in the prophecy of Revelation in the Bible, that it already says that the river is going to be completely dry. And after that happens is when the Antichrist is going to be showing himself. And what the archaeologists did is that they went to this site where the river is now completely dried up, and to their surprise, they noticed that there was an entire city that was completely submerged, which for the very first time, they're now able to go ahead and take a look at this massive city with all the archaeological evidence, digging up stuff. And now, luckily, they ended up finding something fascinating. Just take a look at this.
How many? So this is a sulfur ball. Sulfur balls. All these are sulfur balls. Here, here, here.
Oh my goodness.
Look at all of them. There. Sulfur ball. Sulfur ball.
And this is the place where like the entire city was like completely burned down, and these sulfur balls, can you believe it? They just rained down from heaven. This was from God himself. And this is the place where there was like a massive river flowing down, and right now it's like completely dried up, and the sulfur balls that landed into the water they still survived because they were not consumed by fire because of the water body that was present in there. So these sulfur balls, they ended up landing all around here. So if you go down to this place, currently it looks like a mountain. Entire place is going to be filled with thousands and millions of sulfur balls that is already mentioned in the Bible. And the archaeologists, they start digging this stuff up. Look at that stuff. You can basically find sulfur balls all over the place, and that's insane. I think he also tries to burn it in order to show us like how this works.
Formation,
look at this
you
stuff.
can see sulfur balls.
It's stuck everywhere, like in all the places, like the mountains, and anywhere you just go by, you're going to be finding these sulfur balls.
In situ, in place, they're placed right here in this particular layer. So
that's insane, man. That's a huge sulfur ball. And these things only survive because of water?
So what they're doing is they're eroding out of this, right? And then washing down in the ravines.
That is crazy.
So you have all of these preserved in this geological layer that goes and goes and goes, and so that's where they're coming from.
And then he also tries to burn this thing up, I think.
But be
Look
careful,
at that stuff.
because man, when you get a whiff of these things,
it just gets consumed completely. Look at that. This is basically how it looks like when it's like burning, and it just comes raining down. Imagine millions of these sulfur, and it's going to be pretty much the same as how raindrops are just falling in when there's like massive heavy rain. But then instead of raindrops, you're going to be having these sulfur balls that are fiery, and there were millions of them that just fell down and burned down the entire city into complete ashes.
This is one of the reasons why
look at that stuff.
Sulfur balls would only be preserved in water. If they strike the land, then they're going to burn up. You can see the goo. It's just melting down to goo and then dripping off.
That looks like a marshmallow.
So really, anywhere that they would have landed on land, they would have burned up like this, and they would have burned anything flammable around them. This is how the cities in the plain were burned.
That's crazy. Now, this is not it, because we also have another fascinating discovery that the same archaeologists have just found. Where in the Old Testament and Torah, it also mentions that Lot and his family were spared, and God asked them to never look back and just keep running forward while the city is going to be completely burned down into ashes. And if any of you turns around and looks back at the city, God said that you will be cursed to turn into a pillar of salt. Now, this is where all the things went wrong, because while they were running, Lot's wife decided that she needs to turn back around and take a look at what's happening to the city. So once she did that, she was cursed and she turned into a pillar of salt. And guys, watch this closely, which is undeniable proof of Sodom and Gomorrah, the body of Lot's wife, which is completely turned into a pillar of salt, which also kind of looks like a womanish figure, but then it's a pillar and it's completely made out of salt. That's right next to Sodom and Gomorrah as they were running away. Just take a look at this stuff.
Of Lot's wife.
Look at this stuff.
Discovered near the Dead Sea, close to where Sodom and Gomorrah are thought to have been located, there is an unusual pillar that some claim is Lot's wife.
Look at that stuff.
Archaeologists have studied its structure.
So apparently it kind of looks like a pillar. At the same time, it's very disfigured. She is the woman that turned into the pillar of salt. So they decided to go ahead and test the substance of whatever this rock-like substance is looking. And they found out that this whole substance is made out of 80% of pure salt. And that's
Strange
just
shape,
crazy.
and found that it is composed of 80% salt. What makes this discovery so intriguing is that the Bible says God turned Lot's wife into a pillar of salt when she looked back at the burning cities. While it has not yet been confirmed whether she is encased within the salt, the site provides compelling evidence. This includes millions of pure sulfur balls, mountains of ash covering ancient buildings, and clear burn marks found throughout the area. The site also aligns perfectly with the biblical timeline and location described in Genesis, including Lot's cave, where he hid during Sodom's destruction.
So when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroying, Lot and his family, they kind of decided to go ahead and hide in a cave. So this right here is the cave in which Lot and his family were hiding when the entire city was burning down. And the archaeologists, they also managed to find out the cave in which Lot and his family was hiding. So all of these stuff,
This cave is
it's just
located near the ruins
undeniable
of the
proof.
cities.
And now that you've seen all the clips and you also know that everything that's written in the Bible is archaeologically proven, until this very date, we still have proof of all of these things being very much real. And I know a lot of you guys might find it very difficult in order to believe some of the stories in the Bible. Some of you might have questions, and some of you might even find it harder to believe and have faith in God in all of these stories that are in the Bible without really having to take a look at the proof of whether or not if it is real. And that's the one big reason why I have dedicated this channel, as well as all the content that we make on this podcast, so that I can bring you guys all the proof of everything that's happened in the biblical times and everything that's in the history, to fact check it, and also to dive deep into all the archaeological evidence so that your faith can be much stronger than it has ever been. And trust me guys, I'm not kidding when I'm saying this. All the things that we read in the Bible are 100% true. And you've already seen it. If you've made till the end of this video, you've seen all the proofs so far. There's even more, which I will definitely be covering in my upcoming podcast episodes as well. So make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you guys don't miss out on content like these that we freshly keep bringing up on this channel. So make sure to go ahead, subscribe. It's absolutely free of cost to subscribe on YouTube. It doesn't take a dime for you guys. Now, for those of you guys who are watching this video, I really want to ask every single one of you guys to do your part in order to sharing this video to as many people as you possibly can, so that more people can know the truth, so more people can open their eyes to God. So even if you're not sharing this video, what you can really do is simply just drop a like on this video and also leave a comment down below. It doesn't matter what comment it is. You can basically just go ahead and share your experience with God, or even you can share some of the gospels. It could be any comment. The reason why I'm asking you guys to comment is because the YouTube algorithm, that if you have more likes and more comments in a particular video, the algorithm just boosts that video and pushes it to more people to watch. So if more people are interacting with the video, the algorithm thinks that it needs to promote this video and show it to as many people as possible. So this way we're going to push this video to reach more people so that more people can benefit and strengthen their faith. So your support is very, very much appreciated. And yeah, with that being said, I would love to hear from you guys. What do you personally think about all the archaeological evidence that we have so far? What are your opinions, your thoughts? Leave them in the comments down below. It's going to be a very, very interesting comment session in this episode, particularly. And also, yeah, I did cut my hair. I had a long hair. And a lot of you guys might be thinking, well, this is not Blackwoods. That's not the guy I remember. And yes, I know a lot of you guys might be disappointed, but it's always good to just keep up the changes. I thought maybe why not just go ahead and shorten my hair. It's always going to grow back. Don't worry. We're going to go back to the old Jesus-styled long hair very soon. But until then, this is going to be the new jam. Hope you guys like it. And yeah, with that being said, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you guys on the next one. Till then, take it easy, fams. And goodbye.